Music Conspiracies Part 16. Was Chris Cornell and Chester Bennington unalived because they were going to expose an elite child schmex trafficking ring? Make sure y'all are leaving a comment and let's get into this. There was no doubt that Chester and Chris were very good friends. Chester was even the godfather of one of Chris's children. They were both involved in the Chris and Vicky Cornell Foundation, which was an organization dedicated to protect vulnerable children around the world. They provided shelter and resources for homeless, abused, and at-risk youth, children living in refugee camps, and victims of human trafficking. Chester, who admittedly was schmexually abused as a child, had a passion to stop other victims of abuse. Chester and his band, Linkin Park, also had a foundation that helped young children, and it is alleged that Chester knew about the Clinton crimes in Haiti, which if you don't know, just go ahead and Google that, as his band received $1 million grant from the Clinton Foundation for the SRS Recycling Center. And while working with his foundation, it is said that he found a coded black book with addresses of people they knew were victims and where they were delivered. But the book is not to be confused with the Epstein's Black Book. And it is well known that the Clintons were involved with Epstein and Maxwell. And it's also said that Cornell and Bennington were about to expose some of their friends and acquaintances, and the people they were exposing participated in the same human trafficking rings involving Jeffrey Epstein. Now, Chris was a main financial backer for a documentary called The Silent Children about child schmex trafficking, but after he died, the project was canceled. Chester was also going to appear in the documentary, and his band Linkin Park was going to contribute music. Now, when it comes to Chris Cornell's alleged self-unalivement, there seems to be some discrepancies. Officially, he hung himself with exercise bands in his hotel bathroom in Detroit after a concert where he seemed in good spirits. He was speaking to fans about how he was excited to go to Columbus for the next show, which indicates he had future plans. But when the autopsy happened, it shows that he had head trauma, he had several cracked ribs, and the amount of blood that was found at the scene was unfounded in these types of self-unalivements. Mark Kristen was the last person to see Chris Cornell alive that fateful night in Detroit, who used to be with Heidi Klum. And Heidi Klum used to procure underage girls for her billionaire friends, like Prince Andrew and Jeffrey Epstein. And there's the Ghislaine back there in the blonde. Now, it's important to mention that Mark was Chris Cornell's personal bodyguard, making him the only one that had access to Chris that night. Mark is a trained unaliver. And it's also important to point out that Chris Cornell's wife, Vicky, didn't believe that his unalivement was self-unaliving. She's quoted as saying he loved our children and he would not hurt them by intentionally taking his own life. And I don't want to forget this. The night that he supposedly unalived himself, he was singing on stage. And in the autopsy, he had cracked ribs. And as a musician, I know that you can't sing very well, especially the way Chris sings with cracked ribs. Coming back to Chester, he allegedly took his own life on Chris Cornell's birthday, just a few months after Cornell allegedly took his own life. And apparently detectives were looking into whether Chester was unalived, with the death scene later arranged to resemble a suicide. And allegedly, they put a team of investigators in place and are refusing to rule out a criminal homicide charge. But what do you think? Do you think they were about to uncover an elite schmex trafficking ring involving high-status government officials, TV personalities, movie personalities, musicians? Or do you think that this is all just coincidence? Let me know in the comments, and we'll see you next time.